If you spend enough time in remote areas, you get used to hearing animals at night. Branches snapping outside your tent, movement through leaves, something investigating your campsite after dark. Usually, there's a reasonable explanation: a deer, a fox, sometimes a bear. But animals follow patterns. They behave in ways that make sense. This story was shared by someone who says the thing outside their cabin didn't behave like any animal he had ever heard before. And whatever it was, it kept trying to get inside. Welcome to Tales Beyond the Flame. It happened during a winter trip to a small hunting cabin owned by his uncle. The cabin sat deep in a forested land several hours from the nearest town. No nearby houses, no phone reception, just trees stretching in every direction. He and two friends planned to stay there for 3 nights. Simple trip, fishing during the day, fire at night, nothing unusual. The first day went smoothly. Cold weather, heavy snow along parts of the trail, but otherwise quiet. By sunset, they were inside the cabin cooking dinner while wind pushed softly against the walls outside. The cabin itself was old but sturdy. Single main room, small loft above, wood stove near the center, 1 door, 3 narrow windows. It felt isolated, but safe. Around midnight, they heard the first sound, a slow scraping noise outside one of the walls. At first, nobody reacted much. Probably branches moving in the wind. Then it came again. Longer this time. A rough dragging sound against the wood. One of them looked outside with a flashlight. Nothing there, just snow and trees. The sound stopped completely afterward, so they ignored it. The second night was different. The scratching returned earlier. Not random this time. Deliberate. Starting near one wall, then slowly moving around the cabin exterior, like something circling the structure while dragging claws across the wood. They killed the conversation and listened. The sound continued for several minutes. Scratch, step, scratch, step, slow, measured. One of them whispered that it was probably a bear. That explanation made sense at first, until the movement reached the front door, then stopped. Silence filled the cabin. No one moved. Then came 3 heavy impacts against the wood. Not clawing, knocking. Everyone stared toward the door. The knocks came again. 3 more, evenly spaced. Then silence. No breathing outside, no growling, nothing. One friend grabbed the flashlight and moved carefully toward the nearest window. He angled the beam outside. Still nothing. The snow around the cabin remained untouched. No tracks. That was the moment things stopped feeling normal, because something heavy enough to shake the door should have left marks. Instead, the snow looked smooth, undisturbed, like nothing had approached the cabin at all. The scratching resumed shortly afterward, now moving above them, across the roof. Slow dragging sounds overhead, heavy enough to make the old wood creak. They listened as whatever it was crossed from one side of the roof to the other, then stopped directly above the loft. Silence again. Then a new sound. Sniffing. Slow. Wet. Directly through the ceiling boards. No one slept after that. They stayed awake beside the fire, listening to the movement above them. Every so often, the thing shifted position. The roof groaned softly under its weight. Then silence would return for several minutes before the scratching started again. Around 2 a.m., one of them quietly suggested leaving. The others agreed immediately. But there was a problem. The truck sat nearly 80 meters from the cabin, through deep snow and dense darkness. And whatever was on the roof would hear them the second they opened the door. So they waited for morning, or tried to. At some point near 3 a.m., the movement stopped completely. No scratching, no shifting, nothing. The silence became almost worse, because now they didn't know where it was. One friend finally stood and checked the windows again carefully, then froze instantly. Something was standing near the tree line. Tall. Too tall for any normal animal. The flashlight beam barely reached it. But they could make out pale fur covering a thin body standing unnaturally upright between the trees. It didn't move. Didn't react to the light. It just watched the cabin. Then slowly, it lowered itself onto all fours. The movement looked wrong, like something imitating the posture rather than naturally using it. And then it moved. Fast. Far too fast. The thing disappeared behind the cabin before the flashlight could track it. Seconds later, the scratching exploded across the walls again. Violent now. Rapid impacts against the wood, the entire cabin shaking slightly. Something slammed against the rear wall hard enough to knock dust from the ceiling. One of them yelled, another grabbed the fireplace poker, then suddenly, everything stopped. Complete silence. A minute passed, then another. Nothing. Finally, just before dawn, they heard footsteps moving away through the snow outside. Slow at first, then fading completely. The second daylight broke, they ran outside. The snow around the cabin was covered in tracks, but not normal ones. The impressions changed shape repeatedly. At some points, they looked almost canine. At others, disturbingly human. As if whatever had circled the cabin couldn't decide how it was supposed to move. The roof held deep claw marks near the loft, long grooves torn through old wood. But what unsettled them most were the tracks leading away from the cabin, because after about 20 meters, they simply stopped. No continuation, no trail, nothing. As if the thing had vanished mid-step. They packed immediately and left. Later, his uncle listened quietly to everything they described, then asked one question. "Did it knock?" They said yes, 3 times. The uncle nodded slowly and stared into his coffee for a long moment before speaking again. "That means it wanted you awake." He refused to explain further, and he never let anyone stay at that cabin again. Years later, the structure collapsed during heavy winter storms. But hunters in the area still talk about hearing scratching on trees deep in the forest during snow season. Slow, deliberate, circling, always moving closer.